Awesome, awesome. Great. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for joining me, gentlemen. Let me address the audience. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Good evening, wherever you are. It's about 7:05 p.m. in Nairobi. I know you'll be joining us from different parts of the world. So thank you so much for being part of this conversation. I'm excited. I'm privileged to be here with my homies, my boys. And we're going to have a very interesting conversation about raising boys. You know, we had this conversation about a week or so ago. I think you remember, guys, we had this talk about boys and about men, and there's some of the things that the cultures and stuff that we have been passed on to us and how we pass them on. So we'll talk briefly about that today. But I just ask you guys to introduce yourselves. Normally we'd go in alphabetical order, but actually, yeah, we can do that in alphabetical order. I think Jemo, you're first, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's alphabet. Yeah, so my name is James Salamba, and I'm happy to be among these great men, you know, my brothers that keep me aligned and straight in this tough life of raising boys and the world as it is. Thank you so much.
Yep. Cool. Kirago, I think you're next.
Yeah, my name is Kirago Ngunya. I'll just echo what James has said. Yes, a great group of guys doing life, raising kids, all married happily. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. Marlon?
All right, my name is Marlon. Very privileged to be here. Thank you so much, Mongara, for doing what you do. I have one son, in between, or the last of a couple of daughters. So yes, it's a real privilege to be here and fantastic to have a bunch of guys we hang out with and have so much fun with, doing some stuff that's really just masculine and really great. So yes, thank you.
Okay.
Did I say my name, by the way?
Sorry, say that again?
Did I say my name?
Yeah, yes, you did, and I did too. But you can say it again if you want to. You can say it again. It's okay.
I like my name, so let me say it again. Marlon Logadiro is my name.
Say my name. Okay, and last but not least.
Yes, my name is Ozzy Kiveu, and I usually don't say my first name. My first name actually is Oz, but it's just that it's just not complicated. Ozzy is my name, and I'm happy to be here. And yes, I'm counted as one of the fathers. That means that I have kids, and I have two kids, by the way, a son and a daughter. And it's so nice to be in this forum together with guys that we laugh together and see how life unfolds in the midst of being a father.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for that. I know this is a bit awkward because normally when we have our conversations, they normally flow freely. This feels a bit awkward because now we'll be asking questions and directing people to say things. So we'll try and make it work. Feel free to jump in and let's make this thing as engaging as possible. For guys online, you guys know me, Mongara Mutiga. I run this platform called Papa Bear, and we're all about fatherhood. We're all about exceptional fatherhood. And these gents who are with me today are examples of exceptional fathers. I look up to them. You know, we're working together, trying to raise our sons together. And I'm really happy that they were willing to come and be on this conversation with me. So, you know, let's get started. You know, one of the questions I want to ask, and it's a very general question. What is it like raising a boy? I know we all have both girls and boys in our homes. So what is it like raising a boy, just in general terms? Maybe I can start with you, Marlon. You're our senior.
Or is it? This is where age matters. All right. Okay. I really get this privilege. I'm the last one in our family, so when everybody has to say something, by the time they get to me, they've moved on to a different topic because there's 7 of us as kids, so it's quite a task. So yeah, raising a son, my first comments would be, it's different. I have 3 daughters, and then I have a son. So raising 3 daughters, the age gap between the first and him is 8 years. So for 8 years, the kids are born, they sit on the seats, and when they want to, play, they'll jump a little bit on the seats. I'm talking about the living room, and then they sit. And then my son is born, and he is climbing up places that you didn't know people could climb. And he's doing stunts and jumping from heights we didn't think people could jump from, because this is very different. I'm used to girls, they sit prim and proper. And then he comes in, his energy is different, and his mother's always screaming, hey, you come down, don't stop doing that. And now as a man, I beginning to look at this differently after 8 years of raising girls, or let me say 10 years of raising girls, because you're going to give him a few years to walk before he begins to do that. So it's a different experience. It's very different from raising girls. That's my comment for now.
Okay, and we'll probably get into details about that. But for now, Jemo, what's your take?
I think so. For me, I was blessed with a son first. So my experience is a bit different from Marlon's, where you have girls and then you have a son or a boy and things like that. So I think the best way I can say it's a story of so Eli started walking when he was about 10 months, which is pretty fast for a boy. And so one time I come downstairs, he's by himself, he's sitting on this high stool, and I'm wondering, how did he get up there? So I'm figuring maybe the mom came and put him up there on that stool. And no, so I asked the mom, and she's like, no, actually, he's been doing that for a while. And I'm like, really? So I took him down, put him down, and guess what? He just climbs back up again. And I'm like, what? So the energy levels, the aggression, and things like that, that was my introduction to fatherhood, And I think the interesting thing is that my mom looked at him and how energetic he was, and I was like, yeah, now it's your turn, because that's exactly what you used to do to me. So I think raising a son, it keeps you on toes. It gets you really thinking and asking a lot of questions, because you can relate to him, and you're wondering all the things you'll struggle with, if you will, or, all those questions run through your mind. And I think that's has been my experience so far. He's 8 now, turning 9 this year. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey so far. Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks. And by the way, I mean, you don't have to mention names or anything. If you're comfortable talking about your children's names, it's fine, but you don't have to. Generally, I don't, but if you want to, it's okay. Yeah, whichever way. Ozzy, tell us about you.
All right. Yes, I have 8. I think it's going to 8. Let me just be clear. If my wife was here, would be like, hey, he's not 8 years old. Anyway, few days to go. He's gonna be turning 8 years. And honestly, by personal experience, raising a son is totally different. It's just that this guy has a lot of energy. And it started when he was very young. And I think for me, when my experiences as when it came to a boy, when things to do with, like, if they want something, that persistency in terms of just wanting something. Also, when he was very young, that even when they're still crying, like, they don't give up. They don't give up. They'll just keep on making that noise and cry and cry. I'm like, hey, guy, tulia bana. So seriously, that persistency that you see, that call it aggressiveness, but it's just that energy that a son can give. And my experience has been like, hey, I would really, really love to journey along with him closely, but only to realize that, hey, it might be a reflection of who I was when I was that young, and I had to deal with my father. So just a son is just that energy that he has. And as my fellow guys have said, that just jumping around all over the place, like trying to break limits. I mean, break limits, by all chance, they will do it.
Yeah.
But it's really an interesting journey. You can't do without them. They're just people of energy throughout.
Yeah. Yeah. Kirago, what about you? What has been your experience? I know you have both as well.
Yeah, my daughter came first. She's 8 now. My son is turning 3.5. I think what I can say, and borrowing from the dads who have had daughters first, it's a totally different experience, especially when you have had to deal with a girl who is a lot more chilled out. Will push the boundaries, but not so much. I mean, a boy is so much more amplified. He's so much more demanding when he wants stuff his ways. Full of energy, bouncing off the walls when his eyes are open. He's a totally different package, so to speak. So yeah, it's exciting. Not so much when they push the boundaries, yeah, and you have to discipline them. And yeah, it's just a very exciting experience for me. I mean, my son, there's totally different personalities. That's the other thing. Totally different personalities, and it's enjoyable. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Thanks.
Okay. Cool. Thanks. I mean, I have both as well. So I have my first is a girl, then a boy, and then a girl. So I kind of have like a sandwich, so to speak. I think the personalities are very different. I know that my firstborn was very hyper, kind of still is. My son is not as hyper in terms of like just being jumpy and all over the place. So he's kind of chilled. He's a bit of an intellectual. Those guys who like to think and to pima your akili and all that stuff. But I think that I find interesting about him is that he's just a willingness to push the boundaries. Just the idea of whatever it is that you're doing or asking him to do, there's always more. It's like he wants to keep pushing, and extending the boundaries. I find that the girls tend to be a little bit more compliant with like instruction and stuff, but my boy tends to be very, how far can I go? How far can I push this thing? And I guess it's very similar to other dynamics in terms of like physical, for those boys who are more physical and more into like sports and stuff like that. It's a similar dynamic that you want to push the boundaries as much as you can. I'm hearing a lot of that from the rest of us. I want to ask this question, and I'll start with you, Ozzy, because I know we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, just about culture. And when we were growing up, there were certain things that we were cultured to believe that boys or men are supposed to do. And if you remember, we talked about that thing of the whole the rites of passage, and when a man transitions into a boy, boy transitions into a man, and all that stuff. So I'm just wondering, how is it different now when you think about those transitions that boys go through compared to how it was for you when you were growing up?
Well, I believe, I know society has changed. Many things have changed whereby we definitely sometimes, we don't hold on to culture as much or the traditions that thereof. But I look at, from my experience, and I think just my father, that respect for tradition, to be able to follow it and make that I go through that, the issues that you discussed, like rite of passage, just to prove yourself, you are a man. I look back at him and I see that there's that pressure of course, being belong to a certain tribe, belonging to that tribe, and being raised on that. And his father had to go through that just to prove to him that he's a man. And now down to me, and I'm subjected to this, and having no window of options, but to really go through those things that prove yourself to be a man. So now, when I look at T, now in this picture that I'm a father now and a son, there's some things that I look at and I'm saying, yes, what can I borrow and what can I not borrow? True enough to it, culture, sometimes they did something and they did not define to us actually the clear reason and the end goal. In other words, if I do this, the end goal will be like this and you'll be changed to do this. It was just more of a system of gender. In other words, being a man so that you can, the woman can know that you're a man. Being a man so that, the society may know that, hey, you talk and people listen. And so from that tradition, and I look back on my son and I'm saying, it's totally different. I don't think I would do the same. I'll do it very totally different in the sense that I'll anchor my the things that I'll call it rights, just to instill on his life in a different way. And first of all, maybe I don't want to go into details, but the idea of connecting my son to God the way I'm connected to him, that for me becomes the foundation. And thereof, from that, then other things that I impact in terms of just lives, disciplines and lives, just guidance to excelling in life or living a life that is fulfilling. But those rites and passages, yes, I went through them, but there are things that I'm looking like my father had to obey that because of tradition, purely, not because of making me a man, move a man.
Okay, interesting. So I mean, some of those types of passages and those cultural things, and some of them are community based. I mean, you know, those of us come from Western. Many of us in this group come from Western. Most of us actually, where yes. Let me not say anything more about that. But the point is that there are some cultural things which are passed on to us because of culture, but they're not necessarily have anything to do with masculinity or being a man. I mean, really. I mean, that's what I'm hearing you say. Jemo, I don't know what you think about that. How is this whole culture thing related to our, you know, our requirement to raise our sons?
Yeah, actually, I read somewhere before they said boys and men's behavior is more cultural than it is biological, in the sense that the cultures around us define how we should behave, how we should treat, take things in, how your perception, your context of reference, emotions, processing. So culture is such a strong thing. I think I take a bit different opinion from what Ozzy stand in terms of what culture influenced and stuff like that. To me, I think it didn't have such a big negative impact for me, in the sense that the way it was processed and how I was introduced to it was not as extreme. And so it had an impact in terms of, from early on, I understood what male roles would be. So for me, it was more about understanding to be a man, understanding to be a young man, a boy, and, you know, that kind of thing. So culture in itself is not necessarily negative. I think it's just the toxic culture that we all may experience in different times, right? Even if you look at what we call the Western culture, most of the time we don't see it as a culture. We just see it as, because that's how it's packaged. It's just packaged as a lifestyle or a way of doing things or living and stuff like that. But I think it's for us to be in a balance where we understand cultural things and the impact they have in ourselves. And two, because we're all Christian faith-driven men here, of course, the Christianity and the foundation that it puts in us is the basis of how we process even the culture. So we have to put the culture into a microscope, if I was to use the Christian microscope, to know that this one is, according to the faith, yeah, we can't process things this way. So, but it's important in the sense of reference. Who are you? Why do we do things a certain way? Why do we process things? And that's how I see culture, and questioning it and just building up on it and seeing how that is. So that's how I take it. So it's a balance, but of course, using Christianity as the foundation, but at the same time, embracing what is good and positive for us, to that in turn be able to take it to our boys and raise them in those boundaries. Yes.
Okay. Tirago, let me come to you. What do you think? You know, you've had the experience of different cultures growing up. What's your take on this whole culture versus Christianity versus raising boys dynamic?
Well, in my experience, being exposed to, you know, what being a man involves and manhood in general was a very gradual process, which I'd say started when I was about 10 with initiation. I think we had this talk last week, and there was it wasn't very deeply traditional, but there were the talks with the older men, and, you know, You're exposed to certain things, and you're expected to behave in certain ways, to take on certain roles and do this and that. So I think for me, as I went through adolescence and into young adulthood, into where I am now, I'd say that the role that culture has played has not been so significant. I think because of the blend at home. I come, like you mentioned before, I come from two different ethnicities. So yeah, it was more picking the good and leaving out what I felt was not relevant to me. And I think this also reflects a lot on what Jemo has said in terms of it's a balance. It's a balance. And I think at this point I'd just like to mention something about stereotyping these boys as we bring we've been brought up being told boys don't do this, boys don't do this, boys do this, that kind of thing. So I think this also has an impact on how these boys, how raising boys. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, that's actually sort of like a good intro to the next question I wanted to ask. And I'll start with Marlon. But before I ask Marlon that question, maybe do you have anything to chip in, Marlon? Anything that you wanted to add to this whole culture dynamic, this culture question?
Yeah, maybe I could just try and be as brief as I can. First of all, culture is really about identity. I think that's very important for everybody to appreciate. When you say you're a Kenyan, how would we define you? Because Kenyans have a certain characteristic. It is assumed. When you say you're South African or you're Ugandan, we expect certain things from you. And so culture is really about identity, how you identify yourself. And I think culture starts all the way from the naming process, all the way to the last rites in terms of death, and everything in between there. Now, one of the things I took a lot of time when I was growing up. I had the privilege of sitting down with my dad, who passed away. He would have been now about 94. So I had time to sit down with him and had conversations around culture, and even some of my uncles who are older than him. And when I sat down, they explained to me a lot about our African culture. There was always a reason, and I think Ozzy alluded to this. There was always a reason for everything that happened culturally. I'm talking about the African context. The thing is, we then got colonized and were told that our culture is backward and it's negative and it's bad. And in exchange for our culture, we were given Christianity. Let me call that religion, actually. We were given religion, a religion that was different from what we had. And in the process, we have been trying to integrate between who we are and that religion. And there's lots of things that have happened in the process. I want to just zero in on maybe one or two things, if you don't mind. I want to talk about, for example, the fact that culturally, boys from a very early age didn't stick around the home state, but instead went out to hunt, to herd, to look for food, to fight in the wars, to protect when there was danger, for example, from wild animals. It was always the men who went out to do this. Naturally, it was very clear and understood that men were the providers, the protectors, the priests in the home, because they led the ceremonies. They were mostly led by men. Of course, there were many others that were led by women, but most of them were led by men. Now, I think what I want to say is this. When I look at the transition of a child to a man, it never happens automatically. That is why you'll find people in their 50s who still behave like a small boy, and you'll find people in their 20s but are extremely mature. Yeah? So it's not a natural process of age, that as you grow older, you become a man. No, there are things that are transferred, and manhood is transferred. And I think our culture, as Africans, had different things that were transferred to us as men at different stages. And those were called passage of rights, or rites passage, whatever we call it. And at those different stages, you picked different things about becoming a man, because at every stage, a different responsibility was given to you, and it was heavier than the previous one. And you expected to carry it with dignity and with determination to completion. So when I think about, for example, boys not staying around the house, it's because manhood is passed on. Men learn by watching. So what we see is what we will become. And so I want to say that, being around my dad, one of the first things I learned was that when there was danger, it was for me to go out. It was never for my mother, because I remember in times of risk, my dad would step out and he'd ask my mom to lock the house behind him, and he would go out. Even in sharks, no elect, nothing, pitch darkness, he's out there trying to deal with situations that are probably beyond one man. But his bravery, he's just stepping out into danger to protect his family, made me realize it was my responsibility to protect my home and my children and my family, and not the woman's. Thank you.
Okay. As usual, Marlon, you're those guys who, Yani, you're supposed to just make a simple comment, and then now you just open up this kind of worms, and now you've taken the conversation a different direction. But it's okay. Haiduru. I'm sorry. I'm just,
Poleni, lakini ni ile chai tulikunywa last week. Hii ndio inaleta hizi mastori.
Hiyo ladha haijaisha bado, eh?
Haijaisha bana. Can we do it again?
We'll do it again. I want to pick up on that, because I was going to go in a different direction, but I think this is important. We're talking about the role of a man, and the role of the man for my dad, my granddad was quite clear. There were clear things that men were supposed to do, and a lot of them had to do with protection, had to do with some sort of physical activity. But today's man does not have the same kind of requirement. I could be wrong, but it seems to me like masculinity has changed dramatically from the time when my father was growing up, even from the time when I was growing up. And, a lot of the things that I was responsible for are now being taken care of by some other people. And my question then is, what's left for us to teach our boys? I can't send my son out to go and fight with thugs, because, there's security for that. If it's about some of those traditional things, if it's about lima in the shamba, there's no shamba to lima in the first place, So my question is, what is left? What is there for us to teach our boys that would allow them to transition into masculinity? Yeah, I know this is off script, but any thoughts? Maybe, I don't know, who do I throw under the bus? Ozzy.
I mean, purely, you're right about it. You're right about it. If you want to define a man because of their duties that they are doing, please, this generation will throw you off completely, and you will find no base for that. So true enough to that our actions and how you're doing, I mean, we can use our muscles. Marlon can concur to this, yeah? We can use our muscle and we can dig. We can dig, we can go to the shamba, yeah, that's it. We can dig, but guess what? Muscles now, we go to the gym to make them grow. Guess what? Not necessarily to fight, but somehow to create an image of, you're creating an image, a presence, a confidence. What are you saying? No. As in staying healthy. Staying healthy, be effective, efficiency, sharp, focused. Look, that's the muscle thing doing, but not the djembe way or lifting and all that. And true enough to that, when I was very young, we used to go to the shamba and harvest, and the sun was scorching and all that, and we still had to harvest and a lot of physical works and stuff. Things have changed, true enough. And to myself, and I asked myself, what will that be, as you have asked, that will be meaningful apart from the physical duties? And for me, it boils down to kind of like call it the values that define a man. Like, courage, are you courageous enough to, as life faces you with a lot of challenges, how do you absorb that and keep on going. We've seen young people or young men who have gone to the high, tall buildings when there was a lot of pressure at work and they throw themselves. We've seen all those cases that it can define in different ways. So how do I train somebody? And first of all, on the basis of all, I should make this clear. Before I bring those values of being courageous, face things the way they are, for me, the foundation of all is knowing God. That is something that sets a foundation that I feel like it will set the basis for everything. It sets the basis for everything. Knowing God, like making my son know the true north. As in, life is full of vanity. Guess what? You can have a lot of money, you can achieve it. Or you can lose it and have it no. And you can strangle yourself because of not having it. But what does it make life meaningful? And it draws to the essence of living, having a deity. And for me, a deity is God. And that sets a foundation for teaching those values. From there on, then I will go to now what life brings and how I should counter it, or how I should kind of like face life. So not more from a dutiful perspective. And to be honest enough, I've seen a couple of guys here, we all go to the kitchen and cook somehow and enjoy our meals. We like cooking, But does that define that we are ladies? Not at all. So duty does not play a role here right now. More of thinking of what are those values that can really define a man. And that's the direction I feel that I can go.
Okay. Hey, me handle vizuri, Ozzy. I can see. It's good for you to throw you under the bus. I can see you can handle yourself very well. Good. Kirago, what do you think? What else? What do you think? What defines a man in today's society? Well, how, in the absence of all the stuff that we used to do when we were growing up?
Yeah, I think apart from the physical attributes that are mostly associated with being a man, and protecting the family, the usual. There's the usual. We know what it is. I think there should be a foundation. First of all, as Ozias has said, a foundation is extremely critical, and that foundation is God. Yeah. Over and above that, I think that being a man also entails a lot more in terms of the emotional, the spiritual, which I've just touched on. It's a mesh of all these things coming together. All these values coming together is what actually defines a man. And then bringing all this, closing that loop now, as through mentorship and interaction with other fathers, with other males, it defines you as a man at the end of it. So I think it's a combination of things and not just a thing. Yeah, I think it's in my opinion, that's what it defines a man.
Okay. Relationships, how we engage with one another. Okay, Jemo, any thoughts? Anything to add to that? You're muted, Jemo.
As much as things have changed, they've stayed the same, in the sense that the expectation that is bestowed on a man also defines our behavior, our patterns, and our roles. So as much as, yes, there's expectation of, I might not be going out hunting to get the biggest antelope that I can get, but at the same time, there's an expectation of giving guidance, leadership. And some of those are the things that actually gives security and trust in a home. And I think the absence of that in a home also creates the issues that we are seeing in the society right now. So basically, I think there is still an expectation and a presence that is there naturally, that God gave within. Even the children behave differently when the dad is there. It's not because that you unakula watoto viboko sana. but it's just that the fact that you are there and you are asking certain things to be done, I think there's a better response, quicker response than when let's say the mom does that. So I think there's also the attributes that are inbuilt in us that gives that presence. And I think taking on leadership, being able to be challenged and things like that. And yes, as much as, as I checked even online, most of the time when we are addressing the male roles and issues, a lot of articles have been written by women. That's the first thing I noticed. And the second thing was a lot of the information is comparisons, not so much about just defining the role of raising boys and things like that, but it's more like comparisons, as you can see this side and that side. But I think it's just important to focus on just the male himself, yeah, and how that male becomes a man, and that journey and that process, and what are those attributes that are there. So friendships, of course, God, bonding and having space where you can communicate, I think is very important.
Yeah. Okay. Marlon, do you want to chip in? Do you have anything to say? I know you mentioned something earlier. Do you want to chip in before we move on to another topic? You're muted.
I'm pretty good with what has been contributed. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Considering you're the one who started all of this, but anyway.
Alisha tuonesha muscles. Sasa sahi ni sawa tu. He doesn't need to say anything.
Ametulia.
He's ametulia. This is what a man is, Yeah.
Nina chaya last week.
Sawa.
So I mean, but honestly, I think guys have kind of covered it pretty well. Of course, roles have changed, but I also do feel that probably the biggest challenge right now, or not the biggest, but one of the biggest challenges is on the women, because you want the presence of a man, but what does that mean in your life for that man to flourish as a man in your presence, number one, and then number two, for that man to raise your son as a man? What exactly does that mean? I think it's a big challenge, because in a material world where success is equated to money, being able to redefine yourself as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, in a home where there's a man, can be quite a challenge, because you go back to an office where you call the shots. There are men who report to you, and there are people who you can give orders to and they have to follow. And then you come to this home where you are expected to work along someone who then you expect him to give direction in your life. I think all of us, without a doubt. Am I introducing a new topic? I want to try and avoid that for the second time running in this. I've been flagged already. I've been flagged. So let me stop there. I've already been flagged, guys. Okay. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Just go ahead. Have at it.
Okay. Are you sure? Are you guys okay? You'll ask me to buy you tea because I derailed the conversation again.
We've already find you.
Exactly. So I'm putting ticks. Now you have 5.
Hey, this group of men, there must be some lawyers here. So, so for me, I feel one of our biggest challenges is really the women. Coming from an environment where you spend most of your waking hours, give most of your productive strength to then come to this home in the evening, probably worn out, tired, and now you have to engage a different heart. It's not easy for women. I think it's a big challenge. And then now for men, the DNA remains the same. In your home, you want to be respected, you want to be valued, you want to feel appreciated, you want to feel like you command a certain authority in that home. And maybe on that issue of authority, because I know that's where a lot of the rough edges really come together between men and women. Let me mention something that happened a couple of months ago. I normally run quite a number of activities within our estate, and we're among the few estates that has a field or fields within the estate. And so we would normally do a camping thing. And I remember this one time, because I'd handled a couple of campings that I've organized for the estate kids. And then the kids follow instructions. First time, all of them, I give instructions, they follow. And then a few minutes later, they're not following the instructions anymore. I have to give them like 3-4 times for them to do the same thing. And then they're following the instructions. After a while, again, they're following instructions on the first time. And I'm like, okay, so what's going on here? What has changed? We've started from they were following very easily, then they were not following very easily, then they were following very easily. You know what I realized? What happened was when they were following instructions the first time, without having to have the instructions repeated, there were about 6 men. There were about 23 kids, I'd counted, there were about 23 kids, and there were about 6 men at that time, right? When the men were only about 6, kids followed the instructions the first time without having it repeated. At the point where I had to repeat 3 or 4 times, we were 2 men. The other 4 had left briefly. At the point they started following again, we were 5 men. The women remained the same. The women that were present remained the same. One of the things that struck me about authority at that point, and I see it even in my own home, was that the presence of the men caused the children to follow instructions much faster and much easier than when they were not there, right? This is something that I just experienced on my own. Now, when I do talk about the home setting and some of the challenges women have to deal with and trying to show is, I feel, can I stop there? Because I don't want to go into the other side.
Yes.
Let me stop there and allow other guys to talk.
Okay. Yeah, this is a conversation. I was hoping we could cover quite some ground, but it looks like, we're not going to cover too much ground. I'm hoping that we can carry on with this conversation next week. Unfortunately, we only have an hour, which is not too much time. So this is something we can keep talking about for extended periods of time. You know how it is when we meet, we do hours and hours. So this is just the beginning. I was just thinking about that whole issue of the society as we know it today, and how boys are growing up, and what are some of the things that I consider to be concerns or worries or pitfalls that I can see coming towards us with regard to our boys. I'm thinking about how for a lot of the times the girls they're prepared, at least in many homes, a lot more in more detail than the boys are. So the girls are told, they're given chores to do, and their expectations. So the bar for the girls is higher, partly because they spend a lot of time with their mothers, and the mothers are preparing them to be future mothers. And the bar is not so high. That we don't have as much as an expectation of our boys as the girls do, and so girls are getting into their teens, into their 20s, a lot better prepared for life because they've been given tasks, they've been given chores, they've been given responsibilities, they know what's expected of them. And I feel like boys don't have the same. And maybe it's different in some of our homes, but generally, and that's one of the things that I'm worried about, that boys are growing up into adults without the adequate preparation for adulthood and for the responsibilities that being an adult entails. Okay, so for me, that's one of the things that I'm concerned about. And I'm worried that my son, and I think about my son, and I think about how is it that I can make him better prepared? How can I put pressure on him and give him responsibility so that he's able to deal with life in a better way? I don't know what you guys think. Is there anything that you guys think about which is an area of concern that you think when you think about the future of your son in the society that as it's unfolding today? Maybe I'll start with you, Jemo, because you're unmuted.
Yeah, yeah. I think you've nailed it in terms of the concern. In your question, you actually raised the issues that are there. Because one, I think there's a lot of expectation and information and push on the girl child to be a certain way, to have certain excellence, to be better and things like that, right? But at the same time, on the boys, there's not that much expectation being put on them, and processes and systems that are encouraging that growth for them to take position with the changing world, right? So you find that, but if you ask boys, if you took let's say around grade 4 boys, and you took a survey and asked them who are smarter between them and the girls, I can guarantee you the boys will still believe they're smarter than the girls are, okay? And that is because of the confidence and the drive and the push and the fight that is innate in them. But I think it's just that, and I think we've said this many times in our discussion, you are taught how to be a man, okay? It just doesn't come naturally just because you are male. The distinction between a male and a man, it's not just the body parts, but it's how to think, how to process things and stuff like that. And so society is failing to challenge the men with tools. You just don't challenge without the tools that are needed. There has to be connection. Men need to also rise to the occasion of interacting with other men. We don't spend enough time with the men. I mean, in Kenya, typically, and I know this, I might get some heat for this, but typically what are most men doing? They're in pubs, watching ball without their sons. It's not like they are there with them watching. You see, they're not interacting. So there's no place for them to learn how to do this. The other thing I would say, men flourish in our relationships are much better in groups than they are on one-to-one. Okay, so that's why unasikiaga the boys club, the boys thing. We even for us, look at us 5. We are feeling much better because we're able to interact with each other, pull each other, and do that. So, but women can do the one-to-one. So boys need the platforms and things like that. So the challenge is also just having the platforms and the spaces for them to transition and interact. And it just goes back to that cultural thing. In the evenings, the boys would, after a certain age, now they come from the kitchen and they hang out with the dads and the other men, the uncles. And so you learn and interact quite a bit with that.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
I have to leave something for Marlon to say, so let me keep quiet.
If anybody out there is watching who knows me, that is not me every day. I'm a very good listener.
Chairman, Marlon
It's only these boys who make me talk a lot.
Hapa Marlon your firstborn. In his family is his lastborn, lakini hapa he's our chairman. Okay.
Ask the body.
Ask the body, literally. Okay. Kerago, any thoughts about that thing? When you think about your son and the future, what comes to mind? Are you worried about anything?
Yeah, Mongera, it's worrying. I mean, you've actually laid it out. For me, I think I'll be bold to say that I think many of the fathers or father figures have actually dropped the ball, and that's where we find ourselves where we are. And the onus is upon us. That's why we're here. Many boys out there have grown up with no mentorship, with no father figures, with nothing, and the world has taught them what they know. So I think it's up to fathers out there to actually pick it up. Yeah, there's no way around it. Just do your job.
Yeah. Hey, Kirago, nini mbaya bana? You usually more nini than this bana. You umetulia sana. Nini vile una kwanga na mastory mob. Leo umetulia bana.
Apewe chai.
Chai na njugu.
Exactly.
Chai na njugu. But honestly, yeah, those. I mean, I'm nothing. This thing is very close to my heart, and those are my views, packaged and delivered. Those are my thoughts. Yeah.
Okay, so Ozzy, any thoughts? Ozzy, anything you want to contribute?
For me, actually, is to point out clearly when you say your sons right now, and look at yourself when you are a son then. Okay, and I look at it and I'm like, guess what? Were you connected to your dad at that time? Or it was about rules, following instructions, rules, and be disciplined? There was no connection. And you look at it also, the person that you connect to is your mom. You'll be closer to your mom, but your dad was just that cop, you know, that police guy. He enters the living room, all of us, you disperse. So things to do with connection, no. So, and you look at it at that time, look at the opportunities at that time, even in gender-wise, whereby you realize men had more opportunities to do stuff that were related to dutiful of being a man. Now, come on this day and age, you realize that then what happens, that things change. If you do not connect with your son, then leadership fades away. Because then even uncles and all that are part of the society, and you will turn out good. But this time is this, you realize the society the way it is, if you don't connect to your child or to your son, that leadership and mentorship goes away. Now, I'll just divide it into two. I see leadership and responsibility, okay? Responsibility of being a man, taking charge, and then there is leadership. So when I look at that, I say on leadership, get connected and have that mentorship going on the side of your son, and that brings for connection. Note the environment is different from our dad's time. Responsibility, any guidance can we give them? Training, life skills. How can you define that on responsibility? They can see how we are taking charge of things and training them on those life skills that you can give them. It can help. But on this day and age, without connection, like the way our dad did, if you do not connect, then you lose them. Because to be honest enough, you tell me, who among you that your kids are very, very connected to your aunties and your uncles? And I'm talking about tightness. The way it is, our kids might be connected in the forum that we have here, you know, but it's because life the way it is, things have changed, you know. And so I feel like those two things, leadership and responsibility that we need to show them. But under that, for us to show leadership, get connected to them and find mentorship. And on responsibility, life skills, guidance, getting involved into day-to-day things so that we can really, really make it make sense. Because equally, the ladies or the children, the girls are exposed in the same platform. We're in the same platform. It's not like before, we're in the same platform. And that's just my remarks, how I view it.
Yeah. And I guess for both of those, there's a certain need for a deliberate involvement, a proactive engagement. You know, we can't do this passively. We can't just sit back and watch things happen and just assume that just because we're present, then that's enough. I mean, we have to be present, obviously, but there's a level of proactivity and engagement beyond the obvious that we have to do as men. Guys, we're like flat out of time. You know, I really want us to do this again next week. With your permission, we'll do this again next week. But I just want to give each of you like 30 seconds to just quickly give like a parting shot based on what we've talked about. There's been a few comments on the Facebook Live and a few questions. I won't be able to handle all of them, guys. I'm sorry. We'll have the same guys next week. But for now, I just give you guys like 30 seconds, just quickly just give a parting shot. What would you say to a man, a boy out there who's watching this show today? Let's start with you, Marlon. What would you say, parting shot?
The world is competing for your child's attention, and money and fame have taken over values. And so what happens is everything that's driven is driven to get your children addicted, controlled, and dependent, including their own self-image on something external that has a monetary element to it. Things about beauty, about fame, push to our children, pornography, talk about it, all sorts of things to get kids hooked onto things for a lifetime. If you manage to get kids early on, you'd know that you've got them addicted to certain things, and it'll be very difficult for them to get away from that. Someone once said, rules without relationships always leads to rebellion. It is important for us as men, especially, to take time out to engage with our children, to build relationships with them, to establish your authority with your children early enough that they understand that you are the head of that home, you're in charge, and that you also use your authority balanced and tempered with love to cause them to walk certain paths that then end up saving their lives, because our stories of destruction are too many in this day and age of teenage boys.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Thanks. Rules without relationship leads to rebellion. That's powerful. I'll put that down. Jemo, any last shot? What's your last shot? What's your parting shot?
So I think for me is men need to plug in and get involved, whether it's father or father figures or just the males and the men in the society need to plug in and get involved. You know, the Bible says in Proverbs 23, 22 to 24, and the last sentence to me is the most powerful one. It says, "A man who fathers a wise son rejoices in him." And so it's up to us to actually father, you know, wise sons or wise men of the future. And we have to really plug in and pray really hard, because without God's foundation in us and working in us, it's hard. I mean, we all can admit to that. It's hard to play that role and play it well. But we can just do that. So I think just plug in and get involved with your children and your son specifically, and others who may be in your life that you can actually help to be a father figure and things like that. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thanks, boss. Thanks. Tirago, any parting shot?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just the intentionality around fatherhood, mentorship. I mean, even over and above, you know, raising our sons. I think all of us, we've spoken about it in the past, about mentorship, mentoring young men coming up. I think it's critically important that our sons and young men have you know, mentors. Marlon has mentioned how the world looks at the picture that's been painted for men out there. You mean you have to have money, you have to drive a VX, you have to, you know, and that's a prevailing thought that's out there, probably driven by social media. Yeah, so I think it's very important that there are men who boys and other young men can look up to. That's the mentorship side. And in terms of parenting, intentionality in bringing up our kids and our boys, yeah, bring up the boys with the values and you know, the foundations that are expected of them, that will mold them into the men that they are supposed to be.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thanks for that. And last but not least, Ozzy, any parting shot?
I think guys here have really pointed out issues. I mean, they've highlighted points that are very important. But for me, I feel like I'll first take the responsibility of which most men shy away, is to bring your son to acknowledge living a life of personal relationship with God. Because if you look at it, even if you go into church, most of the time you see ladies and it's taken like, oh, if you're scared, have you heard that song? If you're scared, go to church. You know, like, you know, it's like, it points out the opposite in the sense that, well, please, if you're scared, go to church. But in real sense, I feel like we should not shy away to know that our kids need to be anchored in God, and we need to be deliberate for them to know that that is true, because it will define them, because life will throw on us many things. Many things will come on our way, and they'll be tempted in every way. But once they know that, hey, what is it that is very important that I can live with? For me, I feel like it's my mandate to know that they need to to know that they are complete in their own. If they're in God, they're incomplete in their own. And then after that, my actions to be an example to them. My action to be an example to them. Why am I saying this? Because there is YouTube, I mean, there is Google, there's all that you can talk about. They can access info about anything. Today, if you want to say how to raise a good son or how to love my father, I mean, you get all the answers if you can access that. But guess what? A different thing is relationship. Is relationship. I am unique just as he is unique to me as my son. And that one cannot be pasted in YouTube. That is a real life situation. So I feel like I should take that responsibility, and all men should take that responsibility of connecting to their sons.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I say something? Can I just say something? Just one sentence. I heard this from somebody who said, actually it was a quote from Abraham Lincoln, that today's class is tomorrow's government. The environment our children are in, the information they receive, the things that they will encounter, they deal with, they will believe as truth, as the things that they must live with, will be the rules and the beliefs that will govern us in the future.
Okay. Just say that again, Marlon. What is that quote again? Today's
class is tomorrow's government.
Okay. This class, tomorrow's government. Okay. I think that's a good place to put pause. Thanks so much for coming, you guys. I really appreciate your input. As usual, these conversations, they can never end. We have to keep having them. But at least we're getting started. Really looking forward to having this conversation again next week, same time. We'll probably talk about some more of the same, or probably we'll try something different. But either way, it's good to have you guys input in this. Guys who are watching, remember that this is Straight Talk. We do this every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Please tune in. Please make sure that you're locked in. Papa Bear Kenya on Facebook, and follow these guys. These guys are all on social media. Marlon Lugadiru, Jemo Salamba, Kiragungunya, and Ozzy Ngome. So you can follow them all, hear what they have to say, engage with them. Guys, some of your classmates are commenting on the Facebook page. Yeah? I'm being told the way there are some guys who are with you in school 35 years ago. Cynthia Wamboy Otieno says, nice to see Marlon. We went to primary school with him over 35 years ago.
How was that exposing my age? Surely on social media. How was this exposing my age? No, Cynthia, absolutely awesome, of course.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions as well coming through. Yeah, some friends also reaching out to me on WhatsApp as well, people who know you guys. So you're having an impact. I don't know if you see it, but you guys are all influential in different ways. So it's really awesome to have you guys. And I guess we'll have this conversation next week. So let's be there or be square. Good evening, viewers. See you guys next week.
You did not just do that. You did not just do that.
Watu wa utuna tunajua. Marlon, hawa ni wa 40 years. Wacha wewe 35.
Thank you, Jebo.
All right, guys.
Have a good evening, guys. All
right. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Thank you.
Chai, bana, chai. We need to do our tea, you guys, eh?
Yeah. Let's do it, bana. We'll make it happen.
Hiyo chai lazima tukunywe.
Hii group imejaa Waluya tu. Hey.
Waluya ndio wengi kwa hii group.